We knew the war was over 3 days before the official surrender. Not because command told us, not because the broadcast stopped, but because the sky went silent. For 6 years, Earth's orbit had burned with light. Defense platforms fired rail cannons that cracked the heavens like thunder. Nuclear mines detonated in controlled chains. Carrier fleets drifted like mechanical continents above the atmosphere. The sky had never been dark. Then one night it was. No streaks of kinetic fire. No emergency flares. No falling debris glowing red as it entered the atmosphere. Just stars. Cold. Distant. Untouched. That silence meant one thing. The orbital line had collapsed. I was stationed at Outpost Thorn, a hardened bunker carved into the granite bones of what used to be northern Canada. We were the last of the Arctic Shield grid, long-range artillery designed to fire into orbit. But we had nothing left to shoot. The Valkyrie had broken through. They came from a dying star system 40 light-years away. We didn't even know their real name. Valkyrie was what our linguists pulled from their first intercepted transmission, a word that translated loosely to reclaimers. Reclaimers of what? We never discovered. They didn't negotiate. They didn't declare war. They arrived in a formation that blocked out half the moon and began dismantling our satellites like a child stripping leaves from a branch. At first, we fought well. Humanity always does. The Pacific Fleet caught their vanguard off guard and managed to destroy 3 cruisers before losing contact. Europe's orbital guns disabled one of their capital ships. Even Mars' mining colonies joined the defense. But the Valkyrie adapted faster than we could think. Their ships regenerated. Their shields evolved. Their weapons learned. And eventually, we ran out of tricks. On the final day of orbital defense, we watched through telescopes as the last human carrier, the Aegis Dawn, was pierced by a beam so bright it carved a glowing scar across the upper atmosphere. When it fell, it looked like a dying sun. That was when we knew Earth was alone. The surrender broadcast aired 72 hours later. The Secretary General's voice trembled as he spoke from a reinforced bunker beneath Geneva. We have done all we can. To preserve what remains of humanity, we will comply with Valkyrie terms. No one knew what those terms were. But we knew they wouldn't be kind. Cities had already begun to burn. The Valkyrie didn't occupy, they harvested. Their ground constructs descended like metallic insects, extracting materials, dismantling infrastructure, liquefying resistance. We weren't being conquered. We were being processed. Outpost Thorn received its final directive an hour after the broadcast. Stand down. Preserve personnel. Await assimilation protocols. Assimilation. The word tasted like ash. My commanding officer, Colonel Mira Kessler, gathered us in the main operations chamber. 32 soldiers remained. 32 out of the original 200. She looked exhausted, but her voice was steel. We've been ordered to power down all weapons and open surface access tunnels. A murmur rippled through the room. They want us to make it easy, someone whispered. Colonel Kessler nodded once. They expect compliance. And if we don't? I asked. She held my gaze. They'll reduce this mountain to dust. Silence. No hero speeches. No final stands. Just the crushing weight of inevitability. For the first time in my life, I felt hope die. The Valkyrie arrived at dawn. Their ships didn't roar. They hummed, a low, resonant vibration that seemed to crawl under your skin. 3 of them hovered above the tundra, shaped like elongated diamonds with shifting surfaces that reflected the world in distorted fragments. From their undersides descended pillars of light. Within those beams, shapes formed, tall, angular constructs that moved with insect precision. Harvesters. We watched from the bunker's reinforced viewport as they advanced toward our surface entrance. No one reached for their weapons. No one shouted. We had given up. The surface gates opened with a grinding roar. Cold air rushed in, and the harvesters stepped forward. Then, the sky cracked. Not metaphorically. Not like thunder. It split. A jagged seam of white light tore across the clouds, stretching from horizon to horizon. The air pressure shifted so violently that frost exploded off the ground in crystalline bursts. The Valkyrie ships reacted instantly. Their surfaces rippled, weapons charging. But something came through the tear. Something massive. A shape emerged from the fracture in space itself, a structure so enormous it eclipsed the Valkyrie cruisers in seconds. It wasn't sleek or organic like theirs. It was brutal, angular, layered in armor and bristling with protruding cannons. Behind it, more shapes followed. Dozens. Hundreds. An armada. Colonel Kessler whispered the words none of us dared to think. That's human. Impossible. Every known human fleet had been destroyed. Every colony beyond Mars had gone dark. We had no reinforcements. And yet, hanging above us, was the largest human war formation ever assembled. The lead vessel rotated slowly, revealing its insignia burned into the hull, a stylized phoenix encircled by stars. Then it fired. Not missiles, not lasers. A beam of condensed stellar energy lanced downward, striking the nearest Valkyrie cruiser. Instead of dispersing against adaptive shields, the beam punched through like a spear through glass. The alien ship split in half. The shockwave rattled the tundra. The heavens had gone to war. Panic rippled through the Valkyrie formation. Their ships maneuvered with insect agility, returning fire in cascading arcs of violet light. The human armada responded with ruthless precision. Mass drivers launched projectiles the size of skyscrapers. Interceptor craft poured from carrier bays in swarms. For the first time in 6 years, the sky wasn't silent. It roared. We stared, speechless. A transmission cut through every channel simultaneously. A calm, unfamiliar voice filled the bunker. This is Admiral Seraphine Vale of the Exodus Fleet. All terrestrial units stand by. Earth is not lost. Exodus Fleet? No such fleet existed. Or at least none we knew of. Colonel Kessler scrambled to open a channel. Admiral, this is Outpost Thorn. Identify origin. There was a pause, filled with distant explosions. We are humanity's contingency, Vale replied. When the first Valkyrie probes entered our system 6 years ago, a classified initiative was activated. Project Exodus. I felt my pulse hammering. We evacuated? Kessler asked. Not evacuated, Vale said. Expanded. 6 years earlier, before the public even knew aliens existed, a small coalition of scientists and military leaders had predicted Earth might fall. They built ships in secret. Massive generation vessels equipped with prototype FTL drives, untested, unstable, but powerful enough to leap beyond mapped space. When the Valkyrie fleet first appeared at the edge of the solar system, Exodus launched. A fraction of humanity, engineers, soldiers, children, vanished into the dark. We had thought them deserters, cowards. But they hadn't run. They had prepared. Beyond the reach of Valkyrie sensors, Exodus fleet rebuilt. They mined rogue planets, harvested asteroids, reverse-engineered fragments of alien tech from early skirmishes. They learned. They adapted. Just as the Valkyrie did, only faster. And now, when Earth had finally surrendered, they returned. The battle intensified. The Valkyrie capital ship descended from high orbit, a monolithic structure shaped like a crown of blades. Its surface shimmered with energy fields that bent light itself. Admiral Vale's voice remained steady. All units, focus fire on primary target. Deploy Helios protocol. From the center of the human formation, the largest vessel advanced, the Phoenix-marked flagship. Its hull began to glow. Panels shifted, locking into new configurations. Energy gathered at its core, so bright it forced us to shield our eyes even through reinforced glass. I realized what they were doing. They weren't just firing a weapon. They were opening something. Space folded again, but this time, deliberately. A controlled rupture. The flagship channeled power into the tear, stabilizing it. On the other side burned a star. Not ours. A captured one. The Exodus fleet had learned to weaponize stellar matter, drawing controlled streams of plasma through microsingularity conduits. A river of sunfire poured from the fracture and struck the Vakari capital ship. Its adaptive shields flared, then failed. The alien structure screamed, not audibly, but through electromagnetic pulses that spiked every sensor we had. Cracks of molten light spread across its surface. And then it exploded. The shockwave rippled across orbit, scattering debris like sparks in a forge. The remaining Vakari ships faltered. For the first time since their arrival, they retreated. One by one, they folded space and vanished. The sky grew quiet again. But this time, it wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence after victory. Hours later, smaller human vessels descended toward the surface. Dropships landed across continents. Medical teams, engineers, soldiers. Not conquerors. Not rulers. Family. When one of the ships touched down outside Outpost Thorn, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself in years. Hope. Admiral Seraphine Vale stepped onto the tundra personally. She wasn't what I expected. No ornate armor. No dramatic presence. Just a woman in a simple command suit, her hair streaked with gray, her eyes sharp with experience. Colonel Kessler met her at the gate. "You left us," someone muttered behind me. Vale heard. "Yes," she said evenly. "We did." Anger flickered in the colonel's eyes. "Millions died." "Yes. You gambled the planet." Vale looked up at the sky, where fragments of Vakari ships still burned on re-entry. "If we had stayed," she said quietly, "billions would have." No one had an answer to that. In the weeks that followed, the truth of Exodus spread. They hadn't saved everyone. They couldn't. But they had ensured humanity would not end. They brought new technologies, shield systems immune to Vakari adaptation, weapons that struck across dimensions, medical advances beyond anything we had imagined. But more importantly, they brought perspective. We had fought alone. Now we were not. Scouts tracked the Vakari retreat path. They were regrouping beyond the Kuiper Belt. Preparing. Admiral Vale addressed the world in a broadcast unlike the surrender speech weeks earlier. "We did not come back to survive," she said. "We came back to finish this." Human shipyards ignited across orbit. Exodus vessels shared their designs freely. Earth rebuilt, not as prey, but as a forge. And this time, when we looked to the sky, we didn't wait in fear. We prepared. 3 months later, the combined human fleet stood assembled beyond Mars. The largest armada in our history. I stood aboard the newly commissioned cruiser Resolute Dawn, watching Earth shrink behind us. Colonel Kessler, now promoted to fleet commander, joined me at the viewport. "Scared?" she asked. "Terrified," I admitted. She smiled faintly. "Good. Means you understand the stakes." Ahead, Admiral Vale's flagship ignited its drives. Space shimmered. A controlled tier opened once more. Not defensive. Not desperate. Deliberate. Humanity had learned to wound the fabric of the universe itself.
The fleet advanced.
As we crossed the threshold into folded space, I thought about that moment in the bunker, the instant we opened the gates and accepted extinction. We had given up. We had surrendered. And that was when the heavens answered. Not with miracles, not with gods, but with ourselves. With the part of humanity that refused to die quietly. The part that ran into the dark, not to escape, but to return stronger. The Vakari believed we were prey. They believed adaptation belonged to them alone. They were wrong. We are the species that crawled out of oceans, that split atoms, that stepped onto moons, that survived ice ages and plagues and world wars. We bend, we break, but we do not vanish. As the fleet surged toward the outer system, weapons charged and shields flared to life. The stars stretched into luminous lines around us. For the first time in this war, we weren't defending. We were hunting. And somewhere beyond the cold edge of our sun's influence, the Vakari would learn a final truth. When humanity gives up, when hope dies, when the last light flickers out, that is not our end. That is the moment. The heavens go to war.